Okay, on to the next project, which is MEDIATE, Printed Catalogues of Private Libraries as a Source for European Book History. And this is based at the Radboud University in Nijmegen. And one person is going to speak for a team of people who work on this project. The team is Helwi Blom, who's here, Rindert Jagersma, who's not, and Juliette Reboul, who I think is. But the person who's going to be speaking is Anna de Wilde. Yeah, thank you.
Good afternoon. My colleagues and I are here to represent the MEDIATE team. MEDIATE stands for Middlebrow Enlightenment, disseminating ideas, authors, and text in Europe. The principal investigator in this ERC-funded project is Alicia Montoya, professor of French literature and culture at Radboud University Nijmegen. Hoping that you have been able to take a look at our poster, I will introduce our project by explaining its underlying questions, and then I will touch briefly upon the way it uses a specific historical bibliographical source. In the MEDIATE project, we look at the circulation of books and ideas in early modern Europe by focusing on private libraries and book owners in a period that we can roughly identify as the so-called Age of Enlightenment. The groundwork was laid by Alicia Montoya's research on Dutch 18th century private library catalogues. She discovered that the most often listed books were not so much, or not only, the works of the well-known philosophers, but that of a host of religious educational authors that seldom appear in studies on Enlightenment Europe. She posited that these popular writers produced a sort of in-between literature that combined avant-garde ideas with more traditional worldviews. In other words, books that connected the elite of the radical philosophers to a larger public. To designate these neglected European bestsellers, she borrowed the term Middlebrow from studies on 20th century literature. Indeed, these texts present a number of features that are characteristic of the concept. For example, they had a mediating function between high and lowbrow literature, they were commercially successful, and the authors and texts were looked down on by the literary elites. The primary aim of the MEDIATE project is to identify this 18th century Middlebrow literature and to study its circulation and reception on the basis of a corpus of approximately 2,500 catalogues with books owned by individuals. We concentrate on printed catalogues of libraries published between 1665 and circa 1820 in 3 different European regions, Great Britain, France, and the Dutch Republic. The contents of these catalogues will be transcribed, coded, and recorded in an open access database, which is called MEDIATE. We will add metadata on the book owners and the catalogues themselves. We also plan to launch a second database, Biblio, containing basic bibliographical records of all known private library catalogues printed in our 3 regions of the same period. The information provided in this database can help contextualize the findings from the first database. While the catalogues from the chosen regions present similarities on the level of format and contents, there are also notable differences. These catalogues have been designed in different ways and for different purposes. They have been used in varying contexts and national traditions, and their overall presentation has undergone significant change over time. This permeable character complicates the definition of an exact typology. In fact, this book historical source suffers from a number of specific biases, but we think that a large-scale study will help to counter these to a certain extent. Although this project originates from literary history and the history of ideas, we do not only look for specific titles and study the catalogues as a genre in its own right, with its own discursive strategies, but we take into account all data on the catalogues and their contents, including paratext, information on bibliographical categories, the language of the books listed, owner and former owners, bindings and the quality of paper, as well as manuscript annotations regarding the quality of specific items, the names of buyers, prices, added items, etc. Indeed, on the one hand, we consider books in their capacity of artworks and bearers of ideas. But on the other hand, we see them as economic commodities that can be purchased for a number of reasons and that form the substance of a particular kind of trading market. The only thing that will be left out are images, since apart from vignettes and other typographical ornaments, they seem to be rare in our catalogues. Another concession that we made is the fact that we won't keep distinctions made between different typefaces. Our major challenge is, of course, the development of the MEDIATE database. The transcription of the catalogues itself is outsourced, but we will have to curate and enrich the described data and define metadata fields. To enable automatic retrieval and to make comparative research possible, the information in the different fields will also have to be standardized. We consider linking the books in the catalogues to the VIAF records on works. We intend to create an open research instrument that can evolve over time by receiving data from other catalogues and book lists, and that can be linked to bibliographical databases and other sources containing data on production, distribution, and reception of books. One of the problems we encounter is the interpretation of the handwritten prices we find in catalogues. They are of invaluable worth for the study of the early modern book trade, for reception studies, and for economic history, but extremely difficult to interpret. In most cases, we don't know who marked these prices, when, and why. This often also concerns other manuscript notes. If the handwriting seems contemporary, we can assume that these figures indicate the price at which the book was sold. But then there are several factors that could have affected the price of individual copies. That is why we record all the specifications given in the catalogue. They indicate which elements possibly had an influence on market values. We encounter further difficulties in diverging prices that appear in different copies of the same catalogue and catalogues containing two different rows of manuscript prices on each page, and how to compare prices in different currencies and prices from different eras. Sometimes we find interesting annotation in the catalogues themselves, indicating the exchange rate of the moment, but these are rare and limited in scope. Unnamed books and lots containing an unknown number of books represent another problem. From our view, they hide the titles present in the libraries and are an obstacle for bibliometrical analysis. Omitted books, as well as books added by booksellers to get rid of their stock, raise a similar issue. In spite of their limitations and potential pitfalls, these catalogues are a unique and very rich source. The transcriptions and data will be recorded in a state-of-the-art interoperable database which is designed to communicate with other databases. This will provide researchers and librarians with a powerful, multifunctional, and dynamic tool that allows for a broad, systematic, and truly transnational approach of literary and book historical questions. We already have established working relationships with several academic projects in the field and with the Royal Library in Den Haag. Searle has kindly offered to preserve our research data in its hosting environment. As far as our own research questions are concerned, this project should allow us to test our hypothesis on the existence and impact of an 18th century Middlebrow literature. We should be able to determine which authors, translators, adapters, publishers, buyers, and readers were involved and in what way. This might change our perception of the circulation of ideas in 18th century Europe and ultimately lead to a new narrative of the Enlightenment. Thank you.